So without any further ado, all the way from Australia, Tully Hansen.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd also like to, in turn, welcome Zach Whalen from University of Mary Washington, who has very graciously been coerced into helping me present this evening. So this is a work that's written entitled Writing, which is possibly the least Googleable name for a big work ever. But it's produced using a tool called telescopic text by a guy called Joe Davis. And it was as much a process of exploring what could be done with this tool, which I thought was fantastic, but hadn't seen used in as exciting a way as I hoped. And yeah, writing. Writing is the most interesting thing one can do. Writing is the most difficult thing one can do. Writing is the most interesting and difficult thing one can do. Writing is the most difficult and interesting thing one can do. Donald Barton. There. Call it an epigram. Call it an epigram, a brief, interesting, memorable, and sometimes surprising or satirical statement. A brief, interesting, memorable, and sometimes surprising or satirical statement. Wikipedia. Call it an idea. Call it an idea or a theme, or a thesis. Call it an opening gambit. Call it an opening gambit. It's at the start, at least, which counts for something. It's at the top of the page, which counts for something. It's at the top of the web page, which counts for something. It's at the top of the web page, unless you're reading this on a small screen and have scrolled down a ways, which counts for something. Writing is the most interesting and difficult thing one can do. Donald Barton. I have a confession. Call it an opening gambit. I have a confession. I haven't actually read any Donald Barton. I haven't actually read any Donald Barton, which is to say there's only one Donald Barton whose work I haven't read. I haven't read any of Donald Barton's work. Call it an opening gambit, but I digress. Call it an opening gambit. It's at the top of the web page, unless you're reading this on a small screen and have scrolled down a ways, which counts for something. Unless you're reading this on a small screen, a smartphone for instance, and have scrolled down a ways, which counts for something. An iPhone, say, a Samsung Galaxy S3 maybe, which dates the text somewhat. An LG Liquid Incredible Plus G2 3D, and have scrolled down a ways. This last by way of the Android phone name generator, and have scrolled down a ways, which accounts for something. And who are we kidding? It's probably an iPhone. It's an iPhone. And have scrolled down a ways, which counts for something. Unless you're doing this on a small screen, and who are we kidding? It's an iPhone, and have scrolled down a ways, which counts for something. Unless you're experiencing this on a small screen, and who are we kidding? Unless you're experiencing this, though there's a definite textual component, so reading is perhaps not so far off the mark, on a small screen, and who are we kidding? It's an iPhone. Unless you're reading this on a small screen, and who are we kidding? It's an iPhone. You're just a login away from a chance to win. It's at the top of the web page, unless you're reading this on a small screen, and who are we kidding? It's an iPhone. On further consideration, don't call it an epigram. The word I was looking for was epigraph. In the process of looking up the definition of each, I came across an epigram with which I was rather taken. Admiror operis tenon cessidice ruinis citot scriptorum tadia sustainus. It's in Latin. I'm astonished, Wall, that you haven't collapsed into ruins since you're holding up the weary verse of so many poets. It's in Latin. A Pompeii graffito, which serves only to heighten the poignance, which serves only to heighten the irony. But back to that quote. It's at the top of the web page, unless you're reading this on a small screen, and who are we kidding? It's an iPhone. Writing is the most interesting and difficult thing one can do, Donald Bartel. Donald Bartel was born in Philadelphia in 1931. Wikipedia. I haven't actually read any of Donald Bartel's works, but I digress. Donald Bartel was an American author. Wikipedia. Donald Bartel was an American author known for his playful postmodernist style of fiction. Wikipedia. Donald Bartel was an American author known for his playful postmodernist style of short fiction. Donald Bartel, April 7, 1931 to July 23, 1989, was an American author known for his playful postmodernist style of short fiction. Wikipedia. Wikipedia lists his influences, but they are hidden by default. Wikipedia lists his influences, but to see them you need to click Show in the sidebar. Wikipedia lists his influences as James Joyce and Samuel Beckett in the sidebar. Wikipedia lists his influences as James Joyce and Samuel Beckett in the sidebar, right beneath the bearded and wryly grinning author photo, in which he somehow conspires to even look a little bit postmodern. His smile giving the lie to any hirsute white-whiskered authority. A better authority on Bartel might be Jessamine West. Writing is the most interesting and difficult thing one can do, Donald Bartel. An initial difficulty. How to say the man's name. Pronunciation eludes elucidation. Google proving fruitless. Google providing an abundance of answers. Bartel. Barthelmy. Barthel. Barthelmy. Note 2, the name's incredible anagrammability. Consonant and vowel so proportioned as to yield a mothballed nerd, or bearded old monk, or lathered old man. No, not all of us are so lexically endowed, making do with what the damnable Lord has apportioned us, a tunny shell, any nutshell. And yes, these are anagrams of me, Tully Hansen, in case you're too far gone in reading to make out my byline at the bottom of the page, though a mothballed nerd suits just as well. You can tell I'm a would-be programmer by my use of parentheses. You can tell I'm a would-be programmer confined to prose by my use of parentheses. You can tell I'm a would-be programmer resigned to prose by my use of parentheses. You can tell I'm a would-be programmer resigned to prose by my use of my penchant for parentheses, brackets. My boner for brackets. My taste for braces. Smiley face. Winking smiley face. Smiley face. Winking smiley face. I think she likes you. I think he likes you. Supposedly, you can guess at a texter's age by the composition of their emoticons. The closest I got to fulfilling said programming ambition was a game in which he roamed around Hobart, exacting low-grade explosive revenge on local residents. But enough about me. Supposedly, you can guess at a texter's age by the composition of their emoticons. Those who use noses tend to be older. It said so in the Atlantic, so it must be true. The author citing a study from Stanford U, emoticons with noses are historically older. Nose users don't mention fever. Noseless emoticons tend to be used by younger Twitter users and are associated with more informal discourse. And where does this leave the Japanese, who have raised the emoticon art to the highest degree? Who have raised Kawamoji to the highest degree? Stay connected. More informal discourse. And where does this leave the Japanese, who have raised Kawamoji to the highest degree? Smiley face. Scratching head. Blushing. Flipping the table. Very excited. The closest I got to fulfilling said programming ambition was a game in which he roamed around Hobart, exacting low-grade explosive revenge on local residents. The closest I've got so far to fulfilling said programming ambition, the closest I've got so far for the dream, it seems, will not be put to rest to fulfilling said programming ambition was with Urban Vigilante, a game in which he roamed around Hobart, Australia's southernmost capital city, and later the Tasman Peninsula, about an hour from town, exacting low-grade explosive revenge on local residents. Namely, a local farmer, Gilly. The game was the brainchild of a school friend of mine who was largely responsible for the plot, I came on board as the development muscle, charged with turning his wild imaginings into something resembling a video game. My language of choice was AppleScript, so the game played out as a series of multiple choice message boxes. Multiple choice message boxes akin to what you might see when saving a file or quitting an application, and about as engaging. Suffice it to say, the work never saw the light of day. But enough about me. I haven't actually read any of Donald Barthel's work, but I digress. But I did once read an article that was kind of about him. But I did once read a piece in The Believer about Barthel's recommended reading list. But I did once read a piece on The Believer's website about Barthel's recommended reading list. Some 81 titles, mainly modern, partly post, from the likes of Bernhard and Barth, to be attacked in no particular order. The author recounts the thrill of the hunt, the rediscovery of reading's pleasures and challenges, the rediscovery of reading. Enamored, I duly downloaded the 3 facsimile sheets accompanying the article, scans of the original list dotted and checked, accompanying the article, intending the wholesale import of DB's to-read list into mine, creating a meta-reading list of all the reading lists I meant to one day get to. Call it an opening gambit. On further consideration, don't call it an epigram. The word for which I was looking was epigraph. In the process of looking up the definition of each, I came across an epigram with which I was rather taken. I'm astonished, Wall, that you haven't collapsed into ruins since you're holding up the weary verse of so many poets. It's in Latin, a pompe graffito, which serves only to heighten the irony. But back to that quote. It's at the top of the web page, unless you're reading this on a small screen, and who are we kidding, it's an iPhone, and have scrolled down ways, which counts for something. It must, we imagine, have some bearing on the work that follows, on the following work, on the unfurling work. Let us, therefore, take Barthelme as the organising principle for what follows. Ergo, writing is the most interesting and difficult thing one can do. Thank you.